Right, welcome back everyone as we continue our review of 2016. One of the biggest health stories this year was the battle by stage 4 melanoma sufferers for a publicly funded immunotherapy treatment in New Zealand. Unlike many other countries, including Australia of course, no publicly funded immunotherapy drug was available here. So melanoma sufferer Lisa Renwick took up a very personal fight. The Tauranga teacher was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma in May 2015 and given just weeks to live. But Lisa and her family weren't going to give up. She cashed in her retirement savings to pay for Keytruda privately at a cost of about $150,000 a year and then took a petition to Parliament. That petition was delivered in March, but before that she came into our Auckland studio accompanied by 22-year-old architecture student Jeffrey Patterson. Jeff was also terminal and was also fundraising for Keytruda to try to save his life.
I did have a melanoma removed from my back in 2010, but it was extremely shallow, like less than a millimetre. So when I started to feel a little ill back in May of last year, I just thought I'd picked up a tummy bug. Within a couple of days, I was in hospital. My abdomen swelled to the point that I looked like I was in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy because it was filling with fluid. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And they took some tests, did some scans, took a biopsy, and a few days after that came in and said, "We're really sorry, but you have stage 4 metastatic melanoma. There's absolutely nothing we can do for you, and you'll probably be dead within a few weeks."
They said it to you that bluntly? That absolutely?
They were, to be fair, they were calm, but they had a message to deliver.
And that was that you had a few weeks to live?
Yes.
But why are you alive? Why are you alive when you were told that you would be dead months ago?
Well, actually, stepping away from the drug for a moment, I'm alive because of my family, because of my husband, and because of his advocacy. Because the people at the public hospital told me there was absolutely nothing they could do for me, but he didn't accept that. So he was the one who sought out information. He was the one who rang the private clinic after being told to by the people at the public hospital. He was the one who, when I was discharged from hospital, threw me in the car and drove me to Auckland, even though I was sick. He was the one who demanded that they test my cancer for the BRAF gene, and he was the one who walked to the oncologist with a cheque for $12,000 for the drugs. That's why I'm still alive.
$12,000 gets you drugs for how long?
A month. But we were lucky, you see, because when he went in with that cheque for $12,000, they told him that that first drug, the gene therapy drug, that we'd actually got in on the compassionate consideration program.
Right, now this is a beginner's guide, and Jeff, who is sitting beside me for people listening on the radio who can't see this, we're going to talk to you in a moment, Jeff, but I'm going to stick with Lisa because I want to hear your story. This is a beginner's guide. So the first drug you used kind of whacks the cancer but doesn't beat it for good, is that?
In my case, it whacked the cancer hugely. My family and my friends kept me alive for the time it took for the drug to start working. They rostered themselves on and they fed me once an hour a spoonful of food, which, if you can imagine how quickly I got sick, that was all I could take. And within probably a week of taking that drug, I was able to get out of bed.
Name the drug for me.
Dabrafenib.
And what do you call it, you two? Because you shorten it, don't you? Call it
BRAF.
BRAF, okay. Can we call it BRAF from now on because I can't remember how to even say the other thing. Say it again, Lisa.
Dabrafenib.
Okay. So after dabrafenib, you went to Keytruda, and that's what you're on now?
Yes, I took dabrafenib for 5 months. It was a really hard decision to stop taking it and to move on to Keytruda or pembrolizumab because it had worked so well for me, because it had saved me, because it had sent me into full remission, but I knew that it was going to stop working.
So hold on a sec. You were told you were going to die, and then you had full remission.
Oh, I was told I was going to die in May, and in August I had a scan and was told that there was no sign of the cancer, that I'd gone into full remission, that it was all gone.
And that drug is not publicly funded in New Zealand.
There is no publicly funded effective treatment for melanoma in New Zealand. There is no option but to go private if you want to live. The only thing offered by the public hospitals is palliative care. I got a lot of morphine from the public hospital, but no treatment.
Jeff, can I come to you? How old are you?
22 years old.
And you are in the position that Lisa was describing. It's a blunt conversation to have with a 22-year-old.
Of course.
But you've been told you have stage 4 melanoma, it's metastasised, and you're in real trouble.
Yes, of course. And to give me a fighting chance, I need these drugs to be funded.
So you are now taking this BRAF as well.
Mm-hmm.
How are you paying for that?
At the moment, I'm fundraising on Give a Little. I've been doing it on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever can help.
Old-fashioned community stuff, galas,
Galas
dinners,
also.
yeah.
Galas, dinners, concerts.
And how much does it cost? How much does a course cost?
For the BRAFs that I'm on at the moment, it is 10 grand every month.
Forgive me, because this is an awful conversation to have with a 22-year-old, but I think it's important that we're upfront about this. Were you told you were terminally ill? Or that it was...
They never used the word terminal, but stage 4 I knew. That's
inoperable.
What that meant. Inoperable. They told me I had inoperable tumours in my lungs.
And then you had this drug, and what are those inoperable tumours in your lungs like now?
Gone. Within 2 weeks, they were gone.
And Lisa, yours are gone.
Yes.
And then, so that is an extraordinary short-term blow to your cancer. And then the long-term strategy, you think, is to use Keytruda, right?
Yes.
But Keytruda is extraordinarily expensive and is also not funded by Pharmac.
Correct.
And so, Lisa, you are now taking this petition down to Wellington to say, hey, fund this drug.
That's right, because even though I don't like parting with the money, at least I can afford to pay. At least I'm being treated. But every day I meet people like Jeff who look at me and say, but how are you getting this drug? And I have to say to them, well, I'm paying.
How much does it cost you?
It's costing us $8,500 every 3 weeks.
Wow. And Jeff, you don't have that, do you? You're 22-year-old, large
Not even
family.
out of uni yet.
No. And your
Yeah.
wonderful mum who was sitting through there and who was supporting you, she doesn't have that money.
No.
If you were in Australia, if you were exactly the same in every respect, same illness, same man, same everything, and you lived in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne or wherever, Toowoomba, would you be having to pay for this drug?
No.
You'd get it for free.
Yes.
Canada, Britain, free.
Free.
So why isn't it funded in New Zealand?
Oh, there's only one reason, and it's money. It's funding. Pharmac is not funded to buy these drugs. It's a political decision. It's a governmental decision.
It's the cake decision, and it's the classic unsentimental cake decision, and that is you have a health budget and you have to cut it up and distribute it, and you have to leave some stuff out. Why do you think they shouldn't leave Keytruda out?
Because at the moment, melanoma patients are not getting any share of that cake.
And we
beyond
have the
a few
highest rate of
crumbs.
melanoma in the world.
Exactly. I mean, in the past, there was an excuse. There was no treatment. But now there is. That medicine is sitting on the shelf here in New Zealand, and the only people who are allowed to use it, who have access to it, are the people who can pay for it. Yet we say that we have a public health system, and that's wrong. That's wrong.
What other treatment is available for you as stage 4 melanoma patients with metastasised cancers?
My understanding is that there is chemotherapy that is effective in possibly 3 to 5% of cases.
I think maybe 5 to 10, if that...
Very low.
My understanding is the official figures are a little high, according to the oncologists.
Right.
And it's old. I mean, it's old. They don't even use it overseas anymore.
So Jeff, you had how many tumours in your lungs? 4.
4 tumours, yeah.
And you were told they were inoperable.
Yes.
You took, say the name of
The
it.
BRAF?
The BRAF.
The BRAFNib, yeah.
Yeah, and the tumours are gone.
Yes.
In order for them to stay gone, you now want to move on to Keytruda, right?
Yes. Yeah, eventually.
And you're going to have to pay for it yourself.
Yes. It's ridiculous.
So what would you say to Pharmac, you two? What would you say to Pharmac, Jeff?
I'd say you call it a low priority. Why don't you try wear my shoes? See what priority you call it then.
Lisa?
I would say that while you're making your commercial decisions, while you're negotiating with those two drug companies, both of whom have competing drugs, to get the best price you can, while you're waiting for the drugs to go to the generic stage, someone is dying every single day. And how do you cost that out? How much is that costing the country? And where does that come in your calculations?
That was the end of February. Lisa and Jeff's petition was successful. As we all know now, it was acted upon. Pharmac began funding Opdivo in July, and Keytruda was publicly funded for the first time in September. But very sadly, Jeff's tumours returned in the interim. In the months it took for MedSafe to register the drug and for Pharmac to fund it, Jeff became too ill to be treated, and he passed away in August, surrounded by his family. You're listening to Checkpoint as we look back on the year. Let's stick with the subject of immunotherapy treatment because it was so big in terms of the health debate that took place in this country. On July 1st, we met Barry and Anne Hawes outside Auckland Hospital. Barry was first diagnosed with melanoma on his arm 14 years ago, and this year he had part of his tongue removed due to cancer. He also had a tumour on his heart. In the middle of the year, he too was told he was terminal. But there was some good news for Barry. He was told he would be the first person to get immunotherapy treatment for free.
Yes, the first one for New Zealand apparently, so it's quite an honour, and everything went well, wasn't any problem, so everyone's happy.
How did you find out about Keytruda? Who told you about it and when?
We were told last week by my oncologist, our doctor, and it's just gone from there, from a week ago till today. So until then it's been quite a mystery to us, or something that's just been a wee bit out of touch, but reality has set in and here we are.
And you've had it, the first in the country. What treatment were you getting before, Barry? Prior to Keytruda, what treatment were you getting for your cancer?
Whenever I had a tumour, John, the only way they could treat it was to remove the tumour. So I had 4 of those, and this one, they couldn't do anything with it. So with this new treatment coming up, I was fortunate enough to be selected to have it done.
And so you'd kind of hit the wall. Prior to immunotherapy, prior to Keytruda, there was really nothing more that could be done for you?
No, this was the last tumour I had. That was it. They couldn't do anything more for me. So I had open heart surgery last week. Sorry.
No, sorry, Barry. You go.
I had open heart surgery last week, and they opened me up and found the cancer had gone to my heart, so they just closed me up again and said they couldn't do anything with it. And then our oncologist said that the new drug was coming in and that I'd been chosen to do the first infusion, which is quite an honour.
And very exciting, because, you know, if it works, then it's going to make a real difference, isn't it?
Oh, certainly will, and not just for us, but everyone else that's got the hope of getting on the treatment.
Now, for people who are listening on the radio who aren't watching this, you're standing beside your rather glorious-looking wife, Anne. I hope you don't mind me describing her in those terms, Barry, yes. But she looks absolutely lovely, and I bet she's excited about this too, is she?
Oh, you're right in both accounts, John. She's lovely and she's very excited. We're both very excited. Yes. So it's been quite a wild ride, actually, the last couple of months, but the last week has been so exciting for us that it's been beyond belief, really, that we're actually here.
Yeah. I can see on your arm a sticking plaster. Can you describe what happens when you get the infusion? Is that where it went in? Is it a drip? What is it?
Yeah, it's just a drip, John, and it takes an hour for the infusion to go in, then with the flush and everything. So it's just a normal drip in the arm. Yes, no problems, no hassles. It's all straightforward.
And Barry, what did your doctor, your oncologist, tell you about efficacy, about whether or not this might work, the kind of odds in favour of it working. Has that all been explained to you?
Yes, very well, John. We appreciate the way they tell us everything. There's nothing left out, so that you're in no doubt if it doesn't work, that this is the last step for us. But everyone's been so positive, and it's been smiles all around for everyone. So we're all very positive it's going to work, and that's the only way we're looking ahead. There's no other option, but it will work. Just one thing I'd like to say, John, the people in the ecology department here at Auckland and North Shore, they're just absolutely marvellous. And you couldn't ask for better people to help you on this journey. And we just like to say, both of us, like to say a big thank you to all involved. It's been marvellous.
It was 5 months ago. Well, we are very pleased to report Barry's tumours have continued to shrink, and his oncologist says he's doing very well. One of the more tragic local stories this year was the murder of kawhia couple Mona Tuwhangai and Morris O'Donnell by Ross Bremner, a man they had never met. Ross Bremner was mentally ill and suffering from schizophrenia. He killed his mother Claire and stabbed his father Keith before going on the run. His body was found days later along with the bodies of Mona and Morris. In the days that followed, Mona and Morris were repeatedly referred to as Ross Bremner's elderly victims, and there was little more than that said about them. So their daughter, Jo Kukutai, wrote an open letter describing her parents, their lives, their marriage, their jobs, her mum's fluency in Māori, her dad's lifetime membership of this fire service, the details that make us three-dimensional and whole. It was very moving. And Jo grieved with the Bremner family, offering forgiveness and love. Remarkable. It was an act so at odds with the random and inexplicable violence of her parents' death. And then Jo, her husband and their children went to the coast to heal, saying nothing more until they invited us to join them for lunch. We began with Jo seated at the table, a photo at her side. Who have you got with you there?
Oh, so this is my dad, Morris O'Donnell, and my mum, Mona Tuwhangai.
And you wrote the letter to remind us who they were, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely why I did the letter. Prior to all of this, my parents were people, and I wanted the rest of New Zealand to know that they were people. I wanted the rest of New Zealand to know who they were, not who they became once they were killed. So the letter was an opportunity for me to just speak to that, to just give them an identity where the tragedy kind of masked that. It just covered it, it shadowed it, and my parents were pretty much forgotten about who they were. So that was the main reason behind it.
Yesterday we went to interview Jo Kukutai about her letter and her parents, and we ended up eating whitebait. We found some on the way, local stuff and local eggs. Jo made it for us, but not for herself or her family, so I got into the kitchen and whipped some up.
Oh, you're going the full hog, aren't
Well,
you?
there's got to be enough for everyone. Look at the whitebait in there.
Oh, wow. What can I say? That's amazing.
Just eat it with me.
That is just amazing.
It will be 4 weeks this Saturday since Ross Bremner killed Jo's parents. Two people he'd never met, kind people, good people, like their daughter.
Oh, my goodness. There's a whole bunch of tears on this carry-on.
The other thing I thought your letter did that was extraordinary is that not only did it give your mum and dad an identity and make them real and vivid and whole and loved, you also had the extraordinary generosity to give Ross Bremner an identity. What made you want to do that?
Well, I'd seen, I've met with the Bremners, and I had seen them in person. What I wanted it to be was, he was a real person. So was his mum, and so was Keith. And I guess I wanted that to be seen by the people. It's not, the person that murdered my parents or the person that, did what he did. He was a person that had an illness, and I just wanted people to know that that's where we were coming at it from. He had an illness. We weren't angry at him. We weren't angry at the family. We just wanted to express that, we were at a loss as well, and so were they, and we just wanted to acknowledge that.
What makes that even more unlikely and extraordinary is that while the details of the attacks haven't yet been released, they were so frenzied that Jo had to be told that her family couldn't have a tangi.
There's no easy way to say it. Unfortunately, the caskets have to be sealed. They can't embalm, and you won't have long with them.
Ross Bremner didn't know the people he killed before taking his own life at their home, having first killed his own mother, Claire, and almost killed his own father, Keith. But when Jo Kukutai learnt that he'd been under the care of the Waikato DHB for mental health issues, and that his first victims had been his own parents, she understood that anger wasn't an appropriate response. Grief, yes. Sadness, yes. But what good would anger do?
It was a decision of ours to go to the funerals for both Ross and Claire. It was a decision for us to honour them in their lives, the same way that we honoured Mum and Dad the week before. The Bremner family are a lovely family, and they are suffering just like we are. It's a sad situation, but having anger and resentment does not bring them back. Having anger and resentment doesn't fix anything. So I guess we've chosen forgiveness, and that's helped us to get through this. And we've just had a lot of prayer, not just for us, but for the Bremners as well, particularly for Keith, who's still going through this, who we actually see as one of the biggest victims in this whole thing, because he suffered through it. There's enough hatred in the world, and that wasn't going to help us to have that perspective on the situation. The best way was to forgive, and to forgive quickly. And the biggest part about going to the Bremner funerals was to be able to action that. Because it's easy to talk about stuff, but when you actually action it and you go to the funerals and you touch the coffins and you speak to the family of the bereaved, which is what myself and my husband did. We got up and we spoke to Keith's daughters and to their families, and to Keith's family, his siblings, and to Claire's family, his siblings and their friends. Just to say that we don't have any resentment, we don't have any anger. All we do have is love and forgiveness, and we hope that everybody can try as best as we can to get through this situation.
I've been a journalist since 1989. It's a long time, and I don't recall many situations in which I've heard people say stuff like this. And I think that's why your open letter was so powerful, because you expressed this extraordinary love. Why did you want to write it? A lot of it was around just giving my parents an identity, just giving people an understanding about who they were. Because I think with the situation as it transpired, it's hard for people to see them in any other way. Almost 4 weeks on, in a quiet corner of the West Coast, the kind of place you go to when the world has become too hard and noisy, Jo and Hika and Taylor, aged 15, and Sterling, aged 12, are recovering, taking stock, remembering good memories.
My dad and I went overseas. We travelled the world doing kapahaka, and my dad came as one of his proudest moments, going overseas. And
so much to look back on. The encouragement.
They were very supportive of me throughout my life.
Jo thrived with such support, aiming high and getting there.
I've studied law, I've studied IT, and I'm studying social sciences at the moment, masters.
If Jo has any questions, any sense of something unexplained, it's how Ross Bremner could be so unwell, and not more closely supervised?
Obviously in the last few weeks since I buried my parents, I've wanted to know. I want to know, why there were 5 people who were personally affected by this tragedy. I'm speaking about Keith Bremner, Claire Bremner, Ross Bremner, my mum, Mona Tufang'ai, my dad, Morris O'Donnell. 4 of those people are now dead. Really, all it took was one person to be helped. Ross Bremner. He had an illness. And I certainly have the questions about why did this happen? Who perhaps didn't do what they should have done? What could have been done to have avoided this? Because I think that their deaths were all avoidable, to be honest, and I don't understand why we're in this situation.
As we speak, Hika, Taylor and Sterling look on, a family. Mona and Morris are on the table with us, half a century together, a marriage that endured. We break for lunch. Hika says a prayer. The sun is shining. Mona and Morris would have loved this, says their daughter, gently reminding us that their life is not defined by their death, that they are more than murder victims.
They're just really humble, down to earth, good-natured people. That was my parents.
You're proud of them, eh?
Oh, I totally am. I totally am.
They must be so proud of you.
I can only hope so. I mean, they were, they supported me through everything. They supported me through my life. They supported me through the birth of my children. They supported me, me and my husband. They've been really supportive of us through our whole lives. And so we can only but thank them for what they've done for us. Yeah.
And that's it from us. As we look back over the year, we will have more in our year in review tomorrow night after the news headlines at 5:30-ish. Always a movable feast, the news headlines. Thank you for being with us on behalf of me, our wonderful team and Rowan. Have a great night.